Welcome to the Personal Brand Era podcast. I'm your host, Ella Ray, and I'm excited to talk to Gina Mitchell today. She's a best-selling author, a menopause expert, coach, NLP and Matrix master practitioner and hypnotherapist, and helps women who are suffering with challenging menopause symptoms. Gina, how are you today?
Yeah, very well. Thank you, Ella. Thank you. And thanks for having me on the show. Really appreciate it.
I would love to know, what was the moment that you decided to become a menopause expert and helping women in midlife?
Okay. Well, where do I start? I guess it started not long before it wasn't long before I went through menopause, but I was going through menopause. It was a really long process for me, and it was pretty awful as well. I was one of the 20% of women that suffer really badly. It's like 20% of women that don't have really many symptoms at all, and they just cruise through it. And the other end of the spectrum is 20% of women that really do suffer badly. I was one of those, and I think I had every symptom under the sun, in particular insomnia. But I was a teacher for 30 years, science teacher, head of department, and I knew that something was happening, and I didn't really put it down to menopause because I didn't think that was menopause. I just thought there was hot flushes and a couple of other things, but I never ever thought that it would include depression and anxiety and insomnia and a whole lot of other things that I just didn't know. So when I was feeling all of that, I didn't really put it down to menopause, but I knew I needed something more. And so I was searching for things to help myself. And long story short, I came across this really fantastic personal development program. There was courses, there was weekends away, there was all these sorts of things happening, and I just put my name down. I said, I need this for me. And there was there was coaching programs, there was NLP, there was a whole lot of stuff. In business as well, even though I didn't even think about business at that stage. I went, I'll just have the whole package. And I went and did it all. I was so excited. It was something I really, really loved. And then I just started doing some coaching on the side, because part of getting your coaching is to actually sort of get some practice clients. And that was in 2011. And then I was still teaching throughout all this time. I wrote my book in 2014. I was still teaching. No wonder I burned out. But in 2015, I actually burnt out. I actually could not go back to work. I hadn't slept properly for probably around about maybe 8 years or something. And so it was just, you just can't function when you're not sleeping. So I just had to just stop, and I actually took a couple of years off, and I just thought, no, I just need to heal myself. I did a lot more work around, the coaching, etc. I still had some clients. I still was working on myself a lot, healing myself with all of this. And then I thought to myself, once I'd sort of gone through that process, I thought to myself, I wonder how many other women are going through what I went through. The fact that I just didn't really want to teach anymore, or I didn't want to do it in the way that I was doing it. I didn't like the workload. I just didn't have my A game anymore. And I was like, wondering how many other women are going through this. And, if there must be quite a few. If they say 20% of the population really suffer, and that's 20% of, half the population, which is 10% of the human race, will go through this and suffer as badly as I did. I thought, maybe I can help them. Maybe I can actually help them with the whole mindset thing and being able to point them in the right direction when they need help for their actual menopause symptoms. So it wasn't probably a point in time. It was probably like it evolved over quite a few years. So in 2018, I basically, instead of coaching everybody, which is what I was doing, and my husband was sending me a lot of male clients because he's a business coach, and he was had a lot of middle-aged male clients, and they were all coming to me when they were telling me about their wives and how their wives were actually suffering. So it's like, oh my goodness, it really is. People really need my help out there. So I sort of redirected the coaching and the whole mindset thing to midlife women going through, this crazy thing called menopause and midlife, basically. So yeah, so that's probably the long answer to your very short question.
That's awesome. Maybe that's very stupid question. Maybe most of the people know, but I think it's important to always go back to the real definition of words. And I would like to know your perspective and your definition of menopause, what you know about it, so women who are listening to this podcast can recognize it. As you mentioned, it was difficult for you to even realize that it had something to do with menopause. So let's make sure that women don't go through a long phase of searching for the reasons why they are feeling so bad, but let's pinpoint it and let's define what is menopause, when does it start, what are the symptoms, how can women recognize it?
Yeah, okay. Well, menopause is like clinically defined as not having a period for 12 months. So that's when that's sort of like, that then becomes post-menopause. You're done. You're finished at that point, right? And perimenopause is the lead up to it. And it could take years of perimenopause. And every woman is different. And, some women sail through it, no problems at all. And other women suffer badly at the other end of the spectrum, as I said, people like myself. So clinically defined as 12 months without a period, the lead up to it where your hormones are going all up and down and going crazy. That's the perimenopause phase where, your hormones are really, they're really all over the shop at that point. So you could get your period late, you could get it early, you could have it heavy, you could miss it, all of that sort of thing happening at perimenopause. So that's technically what that is. However, and you think of the most obvious symptoms of the hot flushes, for example, and I think I just had one permanent hot flush for 10 years. I was always wet, always clammy. I couldn't sleep without, I still can't sleep without the fan on, even in the middle of winter. I have like the electric blanket under my neck and the fan above me because I still am quite warm, even though I'm 64 now. So I still kind of suffer, nowhere near as bad as I did, but it's still a bit there. So there's the hot flushes, of course, the cessation of the periods, and probably a lot of mood swings as well. And there's a book called, and this is one of the books I really recommend to a lot of women. You might have even heard of it yourself. It was by a doctor called Dr. Christiane Northrup, and she's an American doctor. She's a gynecologist and an obstetrician, and she wrote this amazing book called The Wisdom of Menopause. And in that book, she goes into a lot of the physical stuff, but she also tackles it on a psychological, emotional, spiritual basis as well, which is quite different for a medical doctor to do. And one of the things that really resonated with me as a symptom or basically an outcome of menopause is that you have like this hormonal programming which overrides everything from puberty to menopause. Like, what it's like when your daughter's probably very young still, are they? You got 2 daughters, I think?
No, a son and a daughter.
A son and a daughter, okay. And they're nowhere near puberty yet, but I think you'll notice a big change in them when they go through puberty, physically and emotionally. And it's because they're such powerful hormones, aren't they? So powerful because, they come on during puberty and, they go crazy, they go boy mad, girl mad, and they want to have sex. And that's basically, we're programmed to do that evolutionary wise, right? So, we've got to propagate the species. So of course we're programmed to have sex, and those hormones are really strong, and you want to have sex, you want to, then from that you want to create a family, and from that you want to look after your family and all that sort of thing. And so any kind of childhood trauma that you might have had, or negative beliefs that you picked up, or negative emotions that you dragged along through life, they're all sitting there underneath this whole hormonal programming that's just covering up everything, because you've got a much more important job to do now. You've got to find a mate, and you've got to have sex, and you've got to, and all the way through to menopause, when that hormonal programming wears off, and first of all the progesterone and then the estrogen comes down, and then it's like that hormonal veil's lifted, and it's almost like you want such different things to what you wanted in the past. And I've heard women say, I just want to poke my husband's eyes out with a fork. I want my kids to leave home. I'm done with them. I wish I just bloody well leave home. And it's like these women go, well, what about me? I've given myself all of these years to my family, and I've put myself last, and I've given myself the smallest chop I've sacrificed everything for my family. And now what about me? And it's because that hormonal programming and it's now worn off. And it's like also those childhood traumas now come to the surface. And it's like, heal me, heal me, heal me. And women are wondering why they're getting upset, and they just get really angry and frustrated, and they're in tears. And I was like that. It's like, I don't even know what's going on with me, but I'm crying all the time and I don't even know why. And this is just such an opportune time to actually get some help, not just with the menopause symptoms, because you can go to a doctor for that, and I can talk about that as well, but and I can actually help women with that as well. But the major thing is to have them realize that, that programming's worn off. All of these things are lying underneath, the childhood wounds, all that kind of thing. And they're actually saying, heal me. What a great time to heal when they're up, when they're actually sort of knocking on your brain saying, please come and heal me now. I'm ready to be healed. So, and that's basically what I do. And it's sort of getting these women and saying that this is normal. What you're feeling is totally normal. There's nothing wrong with you. You're not going crazy. You're not having a nervous breakdown. It's normal, and what you need now is some support and some help to actually heal those wounds, heal those childhood wounds that are knocking on the brain for healing, and then to actually and to do all that emotional work, and then to actually set some goals, find out what your purpose is, put some boundaries in place, do all of that kind of thing to live the life for you. And of course your family, you might think, oh, that's being selfish. No. Your kids and your family want to see you happy. They don't want to see you crying. They want to see you happy and going forward with life. And that means also that they're actually an example for their children as well. So so a lot of women that come to me basically are at that state where they're going, I have no idea what's going on with me, but I think I'm going crazy. And that's it. That's the simple story. And Christiane Northrup writes about that in her book, The Wisdom of Menopause. So that's why I mentioned that book. That was a really big thing for me when I read that. I went, of course, it all makes so much sense. And that's how I can actually redirect my coaching to actually help women going through that and to help them change their lives in a direction that they want, not what their husband wants, not what their society expects of them or they think society expects of them, not what their children think they should do. Mum, you should do this. It's like, no, it's what they want.
I find it so beautiful how you explained it now with the veil falling off. Like I almost cried, honestly, just now from your explanation, because now I understand my mom so much more.
Yes.
I knew that she was going through menopause. I saw her having the hot flashes, and like for years and years, she could not sleep. She still cannot sleep. But she can, of course, not put these things into words like you just did. And so it was always difficult for me to understand why, just as you said, she wants the kids out of the house. She does not want anything to do with the kids anymore, right? I could not understand that because I, right now, am in the mindset of I need to take care of my kids no matter what. And I am totally fine of being the last because I want to get them through this, until they are adults, right? And that's so revealing, so eye-opening for me right now, that all the negative thoughts that I had then or developed about her, which I shouldn't, of course, but I'm human, they are all of a sudden falling off. And I have so much empathy, so much more empathy for her now that you've explained it in this way. So Thank you so much. And I think if I had that epiphany, I'm really sure a lot of women who will listen to this have the same type of emotion and reaction, understanding their moms maybe, and giving them the space and giving them the opportunity to now focus on themselves after really investing so much time into the kids and raising them to their best abilities. And I can really think of a lot of misconceptions about menopause itself, just like I had most probably, because of I'm not in the age just yet to experience that. So let's talk about the most common misconceptions that people might have, and let's clean them up.
Okay, got misconceptions. Well, I remember. Well, one is that it's a phase, because it could be, but it might not be. I mean, there's women out there that suffer until they die with these crazy symptoms. And some women that don't. It's just such an individual thing. But I guess I remember asking my mum when she was, because I think my mum is very difficult anyway. I think most people might say that about their mums, but my mum's very old now, and she's in care, etc. Now she's 86 years old. But when she was going through menopause, I remember my sister and I were talking, we were going, "Oh my God, mum's just been such a bitch. She's such a bitch." And honestly, at the time we were going, "Oh, we were just sort of joking. Oh, she's bloody going through menopause or something." We would joke about it. We didn't really know, but it was about the age. And I didn't know anything about it. Even though I was a biology teacher and I know all the physiological stuff, I didn't know about the emotional stuff. I had no clue. So I remember saying to my mum, "Mum, when you went through menopause, what was it like for you?" And she said, "Oh, I didn't really go through it." And I said, "Well, what do you mean?" And she said, "Well, one day I realised I hadn't had a period for 6 months or a year or something." And I went, "Oh, that must be it." But see, that's her recollection. But from the outside looking in, we knew that there was something wrong with Mum. We thought she was going nuts. The way that she spoke to us, the way that the things that she was doing, she wasn't even aware of it. So I guess a misconception is that when women are going through it, they might not often know that what they're even doing. And it's the same for me when I was at school. Apparently, I mean, I was the head of department at a very big Jewish school in Sydney. And I remember, thank God for my beautiful colleagues, because I think they actually lifted me up, thankfully. But apparently I was snapping at people. I was not being the regular, laid back Gina. I was just being awful, but I didn't even know. I didn't even know until it was called to my attention that, "Did you realise that you snapped at her, or that you screamed at that kid, or what?" It was like, no, I didn't do that. And it's because I think it was just, I didn't even know I was doing it. So it's almost like these emotions come up and you've got no control over them. And it's almost like you don't even realise how bad it can be. It's incredible, really. Yeah. So that's probably the first misconception, is that, well, for the woman, that is, for the woman going through it, they don't even know that they're even going through it often, and they don't know how they're behaving.
So you talked about the emotional state of women and not being quite aware of what's going on with them. So what are some practical tips that you would have for a woman that might or might not notice what she's going through emotionally, to actually kind of handle her emotions in a proper state, even though her hormones are crazy and all over the place?
Yeah, well, I guess just to realise that this can happen. I mean, that's just it. It's education. It's about talking about it and putting the conversation on the table. Because I remember when I was a young teacher and I worked at a girls' school, and there was I was there for 12 years, and I was one of the youngest women in the department at that stage. And I worked with lots of middle-aged women, but nobody talked about it. Nobody said anything. The women that went through it while I was working with them, I mean, yeah, I call them bitchy at times, but and we would joke about menopause, but we didn't actually say, women didn't come and say, "Oh, guess what? I think I've just gone through menopause," or, "Oh my God, if I'm going crazy, please excuse me. It's because I don't even know what I'm doing half the time, and I've got brain fog, and I've got this, and this is happening, and I'm forgetful. And the other day I lost my car in the car park, and I think it's menopause." And nobody spoke about that when I was teaching, and that was only 20 years ago, 25 years ago. So it was fairly recent, because nobody talks about it. And I think that if women and men, I talk about it in front of men now too. And so it's like, get used to it. Your daughters, your wives, your sisters are going to go through this, and you need to know just as much as any woman. So it's important, to talk about it openly, and to have the conversations, and because it's a normal part of life. And so it's nothing to be ashamed of. It's nothing to not talk about. This is normal part of life for women as they get older, and it's going to happen to all women at some point. If we live long enough, it's going to happen. So it's important to be able to understand, to talk about it, to have the conversation, to talk to our family when we're not feeling well, you know. And I was in denial for a long time myself, and I didn't have any kids or anything, but my husband, he'd say to me, Gina, you know, there's something wrong, there's something going on with you. And because I was in denial, it's like, no, I'm fine. You know, I'm just not sleeping really well, but I'm fine. I'll be okay. Just leave me alone. Just leave me alone. You know, and he said it to me a few times, and I would just say, I just shut him off. Instead of saying, you know, if I knew then what I know now, I'd say, oh my God, I didn't know that menopause was going to be like this, or I didn't know that I was going to be so emotional. I didn't know that I wasn't going to sleep. I didn't know. And so I need some support now. And I didn't even know where to get support from. I went to the doctor, and I didn't go to a special menopause doctor. I just went to a local GP. I couldn't even get into my GP. I had to go to like the medical centre. And they put me on these hormones, the HRT, which were way too strong for me. And I just bled for a month. And I just went, oh, I don't think this is right, you know. I felt a bit better. I felt like my emotions were a little bit more manageable. And I felt like, you know, my hormones were okay. But I was bleeding. I thought, no, this isn't right. So I had to go off it. They put me on something else. That didn't work either. So I didn't go on anything. And that was like 25 years ago. So, of course, not 25. What am I now? 64. So 40. So about 15 years ago. Can't even do the math at the moment. All about brain fog. So that didn't work for me. And I didn't know at the time that there are special doctors all over the world that actually they're GPs, but they kind of specialise in menopause. And you can look them up on websites, etc. So, for example, in Australia, in this part of the world, there's the Australasian Menopause Society. And if you go to their website, there is a list of doctors and GPs that specialise in menopause. And so they've had a lot more training around menopause. They have a lot more knowledge. And so you can go to them and they're not just doing a hit and miss. You know, they know all about the HRT and how it's advanced in recent years and how it can be customised for the person rather than a one size fits all. There's the hormones that are bioidenticals. They're made from yams rather than horse urine. It's advanced so much in the time since I began menopause. There's so much more help for women out there as far as HRT goes, and even, you know, other treatments like herbal treatments, etc. So, but, you know, before we even can know about this, we've got to have the conversations. We've got to have it freely and openly. And, you know, in particular at work too, because workplaces can become quite hostile towards women that are not coping really well. So we've got to have those open conversations at work and have, you know, in our workplaces some I don't know, just some support, you know, even air conditioning, for example, or fans, or a place where you can go to be quiet, you know, because your head is in a spin and there's noise around. I became really noise sensitive, and especially at a school, you can imagine it's noisy all day long. So it's just like, oh my God, I can't stand this noise. This noise is just driving me crazy. So, you know, just to have in the workplace support for women that are going through this so that they can still do their job well, but they just need that bit of support.
I love everything that you just said. Not only that you think we should talk more about it, because like the average person does not nearly know enough about it. Even today, right? We are so advanced, but still we don't know the basic things about what women actually go through. Like everybody knows about the period by now, I hope. But like,
Yes.
What about her other life? You know, what about her whole lifespan? Because based on the hormones that we go through all our lives, like it dictates everything that we do. And if people don't know,
Yes.
just like you say, they will just snap at us. They will say, oh, you're a bee, you know, you're whatever, you're so annoying today, you know. They will not know the tools and strategies and communication skills, so to speak,
That's it.
to address that, to talk to us, and it's not like we are babies or anything. I think it should be a mutual thing. Women should be interested in their own hormonal life and in the balance of it, their emotional responsibility, right, for their emotional intelligence, so to speak. They should be interested in it, not to come off bitchy, as you say, right? Not to hurt anyone because they're going through hormones. That should not be the excuse. I mean, if you don't know, you don't know, but you should be interested in noticing, being aware of these little subtle things. And at the same time, also our surroundings should be interested in that, because we want to live peacefully together. So I should be interested in my own hormonal life. I should also be interested in the hormonal life of a man, right? It's less intense than for a woman, but still they're also going through things that we should know about, right? To address them properly, to help them, to support them, and as you said, in the workplace, I think that's like the worst thing that can happen to a woman, that she's working a 9-to-5 job where they are not interested at all in her personal life, in anything that she's going through, but just work for me, woman, right? No matter how you feel. Do you have like, and even when women are on a period, there are also a certain percentage that are suffering particularly heavily when they have their periods. So nobody's really paying attention to that, right? Even in school, when girls go to school, right? Like if you have sports, right? Teachers oftentimes, at least that's my experience in Germany, or has been, teachers didn't pay attention to that, even though they were women themselves. And if a girl came up to them and said, I have my period and it's really painful and I can barely stand, you know, we had girls like that, they would still be forced to do sports because we're all equal, right? You still have to do your job. And I think that's wrong. I think that's completely wrong. If there is a percentage of women who goes through it in a very horrible way, then we should have empathy. We should let them off the hook, so to speak. What's the sense of pressuring a person into doing something? Like, you do direct harm to that person. Like, what's the goal with that? So I completely agree with you. We should, and which we do on this podcast, and it will reach a lot of women, it will reach a lot of men also. I have 50-50 listeners on YouTube, men and women, so they will also hear that important part. And you have also mentioned natural remedies. Now that is something that I'm most interested in. If I compare that to like other medicine types and what doctors normally would prescribe, because maybe they just want you out of the doctor's office as fast as possible. There are doctors like that out there.
Oh yeah.
Which I don't appreciate at all. So let's talk about natural remedies that you may have encountered that could help women in that phase.
Yes. Well, for me, I found the HRT that I needed, which ended up being bioidenticals. And I know there's issues around that because they're compounded in chemists, and of course there's not as much quality control about how much hormones in them and all that sort of things as it is if you actually get a medication that's been tested and tried and all that kind of thing. So but that was what saved me, and I think there's so many more options now, but that's what saved me. And as soon as I found it was the Australian Menopause Centre, and as soon as I found them, they did everything by phone, and they got me on these troches and some creams for testosterone, and it took a few months, but we finally got my hormones balanced, and I felt so much better. And what they do is they start off with the minimum amount of hormones first. They start you off on progesterone, and then they increase it until you start feeling good. So it's the minimum dose for the maximum effect kind of thing. So I did that. I think I personally needed that. I don't think that anything natural. Oh, I tried everything natural before that, by the way, just off the shelf stuff. So there was Remy Femin, and I think a whole lot of these things do work for some women. So it's worthwhile having a go. So there was a whole lot of products that you can just go and ask your chemist about that they actually have. When I came off I'm not on HRT anymore. As soon as I tried to go off it a couple of times, but then all of the hideousness came back, so I went back on it again. And I tried to come off it a couple of times, wasn't ready, but the last time was probably around about the beginning of COVID, I think. So I thought, okay, time to give it another go. I started to come off it with the help of the Australian Menopause Centre. I did come off it, and I was fine. However, I have a herbalist. Now, my lovely herbalist woman, she is actually also a nurse. She's a menopause expert as well, because she's now 76. So, but she's been working as a nurse ever since she was a teenager. And she's come through, so she does a lot of the nursing stuff. She knows all about the medicine, but she's really passionate about the natural remedies as well. And she makes up I call it the witch's brew. She makes up a concoction for me. There's probably a combination of different herbs. In fact, I don't even know what's in it these days. I didn't know at the beginning, but because I've been on it for so many years, I can't remember now. But I think there's black cohosh and there's a few other things as well. I'll have to ask her. But that's really helped me as well, because after the HRT, I didn't want to go rock bottom again. I sort of kind of transitioned into the herbs. So that's what I take now. And I think I'll be taking those for the rest of my life. It suits me, basically. And I think there's probably a lot of women out there that could probably go straight onto the herbs and not go via the HRT route. Although it depends on the woman. Everybody's so different. And I would always recommend doing the HRT. There's a book that I read recently, another book that I will mention, and it's written by an Australian woman, and her name is Gina Mitchell. In fact, she's one of the mums at the school that I used to teach at. She's also a doctor and she's an expert in menopause, but she wrote a book called The M Word. And so Ginny, G-I-N-N-I, Mansberg. And she wrote this book, and it was really good. I mean, from a doctor's point of view, from a patient's point of view, it's so good, and it addresses everything to do about menopause. And she actually mentions in it about that there was the women's health initiative that was going on in the 80s and 90s, and they came up with these results that HRT gives you a greater chance of getting breast cancer. And so that's probably one thing I would recommend to a woman, is to go to a specialist menopause doctor and investigate HRT. And if it doesn't suit them because of some, estrogen sensitive cancer that they might actually be prone to, well, of course, there are other avenues. But to not rule HRT out, to go down what a lot of women think is the natural route, because it might not work for them, and we don't want to have women suffer unnecessarily.
No.
No.
And you also wrote a book, right, which became a bestseller, also.
Yes.
Called Ignite the Spark.
I've got a copy here, Ignite the Spark, and it's about midlife relationships, because I wrote it, because relationships they're a big part of my life. I met my husband later in life. I was single for a really big portion of my life. I should have written a book about internet dating and dating prior to the internet, because that would have been a bestseller, but I threw all my little black books out when I met my husband, so I have no notes. And of course, menopause made me forget most of them anyway, so now I don't remember. But yes, it was about midlife life relationships and how to actually improve your relationship. Because what happens, of course, in midlife, a lot of women have been married to the same guy for a long time, or they might have been married for a couple of times, but by the time they get to midlife, they probably have been with somebody for a while, and it changes. Your libido goes down. So if their libido doesn't match yours, there could be conflict, all of that. But also because a lot of women, it's like, well, what about me now? I don't want to cook anymore. I don't want to look after the house. I want the kids to leave home. I want to go and do a trip around the world by myself. So they find themselves, and the husband might be going, what the hell's going on here? So it's really important that there's communication, and that you can talk about it, and that you can, improve your relationship while going through midlife. Or if you really need to, that it's okay to leave, but to leave with love rather than with conflict. So that's what the book is all about. And there's a lot of strategies in there to improve your relationship. Or to leave as well if you need to.
Mm-hmm. I would almost say and think that if a young woman, for example, like how she chooses a man, maybe to marry, to start a family, is oftentimes she only thinks about the fact or the question whether that man would be a good father. But I think considering this type of phase of the woman at the end of her life, if you intend to spend your life with this man, then before you get married, like, better ask the question, will he be a good partner when I go through that phase? Because you will
Exactly.
go through that phase. Is his
Exactly.
communication skill high enough for me to actually talk through the things that are going on inside of me, or does he just dismiss them? Is he really paying attention to my emotional world enough so that I feel safe to talk about these things? And what does
Yes.
he
So
do
important.
about that once I tell him, right? Does he just listen and then go off and does his stuff that he does every day? Or does he actually try to help me? Is he actually a support? I think,
So important, so important. And of course, when you're at the beginning of your love life, you know, when you're in your early 20s, you're not going to think about, oh my God, it seems like a lifetime till you think about going through menopause. So it's like, is this guy right for me now? And you know, the thing is, so a lot of people can grow together and stay together for a long time, and that's fantastic. That's beautiful. But if it doesn't happen and he's not the right person for you anymore, there's nothing wrong with going your own separate ways. There's nothing wrong with parting ways and saying, I love you, it's just not right anymore for me. And to be able to have a conversation around it and make a plan to leave. There's nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong. Because it doesn't matter. Whatever stage of your life you're going through, it's really important that you make yourself happy. And I say make yourself happy because nobody else can make you happy. It's up to you to make yourself happy. So if you're not happy and there's something going wrong, then it's up to you to fix it. You know,
yeah,
with doing as minimum harm as possible along the way.
it's really funny that especially young women still tend to think that once they find the right man, he will make her happy. But if she's not able to make herself happy, if she does not even know what makes her happy, how does she expect a person that's not even living in her mind and in her body to figure out what makes her happy? That's really funny. And I think that young girls cannot even get there just yet. Maybe in the 20 years we will, as a society, be up there. But in my generation, like, I'm almost 40 now, it just came to me in the last years. Like, as a young woman, I didn't think about all these things, right? Though, as you described in the beginning, there was something else going on, you know, the hormonal and like the life goal,
you just want to get a really handsome man and you just want to have great sex with him, and there's nothing wrong with that because that's what you do at that age, right? It's perfectly natural. It's just that it's different when you get older. You know, it's like you want a companion, a man that's going to be your mate, your friend, you know. And like, I'm so glad for my husband. I'm so happy that I met him rather than anybody else, because he's lots of fun, but he's also, we have similar values. And the beauty is too, we have the same love language. And so it was easy for us. We're both acts of service. We both do things. That's how we show each other love. But if you've got a different love language, you might have to sort of work a little bit harder. That's all. But yeah, to have somebody in your life that can understand. And he was one that pulled me up and said, Gina, there's something not right with you. There's something not right with you, you know, and you really need to look at this. And I'm like, no, I was the one that was in denial. So at first, yeah. So it's so important to have, you know, number one, you've got to have a really great relationship with yourself, because I've always said, this has been my motto, I'd rather be happily single than unhappily in a relationship. So, and although of course the best thing is to be happily in a relationship, then happily single, and then I wouldn't even go down to being unhappily in a relationship. I'd just leave. And I've done that before many times. But yeah, it's so important to have, if you're going to have somebody in your life, that it's the right person or a right person.
Yeah, I think the success rate of a relationship will be so much higher once you have learned kind of to manage yourself, right? Manage your mental space, manage your emotional space, manage your health and physical space, manage your values, know what your values are, and boundaries, right? Not only having them, right? They are somewhere in the box, but I never utilize them. I never set those boundaries, right? They are somewhere, you know. I think it's very important, especially as a woman, to have those boundaries and values and stand by them, no matter who comes, no matter who wants what from you,
exactly right?
And
Yes.
then any type of partner that will come along, you will be so much more capable of managing also his values, goals, vision, expectations, boundaries, because you already respect your own. You will know how to do it. So I think it's incredibly important to, even for young girls and women,
to know themselves,
go in that direction and really think these things through before we are all blasted away by the mere attraction that we have for a person, because that's not enough. Him being nice is not enough, you know?
That's right. Yes, exactly. But of course, you know, that animal attraction, that's evolution. That's just to get us, you know, onto the next generation, having babies, etc. And it works. It works well. We want to be more than that. You know, we are not just biological, we are also emotional and psychological, and there's so many other layers which become really, really important at midlife when all that biological stuff, you know, kind of wears off, and you want something more. Then it's like the next chapter. What's the next chapter going to look like for us? So yeah, it's really important.
Let's talk now about the specific services that you provide your clients with.
Okay, so I have a number of programs because, of course, I'm an expert in NLP, including timeline or matrix therapies, and also I've got a hypnotherapist as well. So basically what I do is if a woman comes to me, it's a free session to begin with, to find out what's going on really, and to find out if I can help. And also to find out that if I can help, what program would best suit her. And I might actually have to customize something as well. So what we tend to do is work on the emotions, because women become quite emotional around about that time when that hormonal programming wears off, or as I say, the hormonal veil lifts, and they don't know what's going on. So it's like, okay, let's just clear up these old emotions, all of these old things from childhood. They're from childhood. And even if you had the most idyllic childhood, it doesn't mean that you don't have your own traumas from, it could be anything, you know, like being bullied at school, or, you know, your dad looking at you the wrong way because he was tired, and you've made a decision from that. Dad doesn't love me. Daddy doesn't love me. And you hang on to that unconsciously. A lot of this stuff, I'd say most of it is totally unconscious. And that's why women don't know why. I don't know why I'm crying all the time, or I don't know why I'm upset. I don't know why. And it's because of all this childhood stuff that's now coming up to be healed once that hormonal veil has lifted. So there's emotional work that I do. So I have programs around emotional work, old traumas, all of that kind of thing. And then I have programs where we set goals. And then setting goals, you know, for the next, 7 years, 3 years, 6 months, whatever, and to find out what it is that they want. And so I focus on the fact it's like, okay, you've probably been sort of on somebody else's goal plan probably most of your life. First it was your parents, then it was your partners, and then it was your bosses and societies. It's like, well, what do you want? A lot of women say, I don't know. They come to me and they go, I don't know. It's like, okay, well, let's just work on best version of you first of all. What does that look like to you? And then we can sort of then get to the stage where they go, oh, I've always wanted to do this or do that, but I never thought I could because I didn't have the time, the money, the space, whatever it might be. It's like, well, okay, well, let's look at that. Let's work on that. And so, yeah, it's about them helping to find themselves, helping to define it exactly what it is that they want. And then as they're working towards their goals, of course, all the crap comes up, you know, that I'm not good enough, all the limiting beliefs, and we can work on those at the same time that we're actually working through goals, towards their goals. So they're the programs that I actually do. I also do hypnosis. You know, depending on what women want, it could be for weight loss, or if they're smokers. Quit smoking's great for hypnosis is really great for that kind of thing, smoking, losing weight, if that's what they want. So they're the kinds of things that I actually do with women. But it's really getting them to recognise, and it's that pivotal time in midlife when you're going through menopause where everything seems to change. everything changes. You know, it's just like that old life. What the hell was I thinking all those years doing all that? You know, it's like, well, am I just a dried up old crone now? You know, and in the olden days, that's what people would think. Even at 64, I don't think of myself as an old crone. I just don't see that in the mirror or anything. I don't feel it. I still feel like I'm 20, and I still feel like I really want to do all these amazing things in my life. And so when women recognize that, you know, we've still got half a lifetime. You know, think about it, say from 45, you know, you've probably got till 100, you've still got more than half a life to live. And so, you know, you want to live it in the best way possible, not think that you're at the end of it because you've gone through menopause. Menopause is just a stage, and then it's a perfect opportunity to reinvent your life. Because oftentimes, you know, women have more money, they have more time, the kids are gone usually. You know, they could even be in that sandwich generation where they've got teenagers at home and aging parents that require them. So that can be quite stressful, but it is a time of change nevertheless. And so it's a perfect time to redefine themselves and to actually figure out what it is that they want for their own lives, so that they can be fulfilled and happy and, you know, have that purpose, you know, that purpose in life, which is just so important.
Absolutely. It made me think that, and I would ask you that question, would you say that it would make it better or easier for women if they didn't stop growing when they become moms themselves,
Yes.
when they
Yes.
don't stop putting into themselves, pouring into themselves, developing their own person, character, what have you, as soon as they have kids? Would you say that would make it easier later on to not have that huge baggage to work on or to go through?
Yeah,
Because
well,
that's something that I do notice with young mothers, myself included, that as soon as you have kids, you kind of, that's like natural. You cannot go beyond it. Like it's
life
not
has
possible.
changed.
You
Yeah.
start to only
Yes.
focus on the kids. I mean, if they're small, that's correct. You probably should do that, right? 100% kids, you know. And the woman is capable to handle that, right? Physiologically, we are made to handle that, even if you're not sleeping or you have 2 hours of sleep
Yes.
every
You
night
figure it out somehow.
for I don't know, 3 years. Yes,
That's right.
you will suffer from it. You will have like consequences, health consequences from that, having lack of sleep. But I think the female body is able, and only able if after the kid is around 3 years old and somewhat independent, that you start to pouring into yourself, that you start prioritizing sleep again, that you start prioritizing
Yes.
your physical
Yes.
health, your diet,
Yes.
everything that is you. Because imagine if you stop developing as a mom, you are always a role model for the kids. So if you stop
Yes.
growing, the kids will never grow up. And I think that's something that women need to think about. Also, when they think about the later stage of the life or the changing phase of menopause, you will not have such a big of a baggage later on if you never stop growing. And the
Yes.
consciousness
Yes.
about that just now starts to kind of appear, especially in the coaching space. And women who are more on a professional level, I'd say, they are pushed into that type of consciousness. But I think we need to push it even more, because women should not suffer just because they have kids. And I think they
Exactly.
should be conscious about that, and their partners and the environment should also be very conscious about that and support women in that.
Absolutely. Yeah. I never had kids, so I never had that issue. I was footloose and fancy free and single for pretty much at most of my reproductive years. So I didn't go through that. But I saw my sister and I saw my friends going through all of that. And it was kids are all consuming, and as you well know, and there's nothing wrong with being in that space at that time. But as you say, as they grow, it's so important for women to look after themselves as far as their diet, their mindset, their physicality, their exercise, you know, self-care, whatever that looks like to them. developing, reading interesting stuff, listening to interesting podcasts, whatever it might, like this one, so that they can continue to grow and to still be themselves rather than somebody's mother or somebody's wife. And yeah, because that's really going to actually affect them when their kids leave home and they've just been consumed with their kids. And even though it's sad when they leave home, I get that. I saw that with my sister and my friends. And it's like, oh, I don't want them to leave. And it's like, of course, you love them so much. And if they've been a part of you for so much, part of your life, of course you don't want them to leave. However, this is now time for you. This is time for the next stage. The kids are always going to be there. They'll just come and visit you whenever and give you grandkids. And how wonderful would that be? But it's just so important for the woman to continue to grow. And as you say, be that role model for her children. She's not just mum. She's Ella or she's Gina or whatever. She's more than just mum. So, yeah, so important. Yeah.
And where can people actually find you once they have felt that spark of inspiration to work with you? Where can they find you?
Okay, my website is, I don't know whether you can put it somewhere on the text or whatever, but I can give you the link so that people can find me. But just say what it is. It's www.midlifecoachingforwomen.com.au because I'm in Australia.
And
so everything's on that website.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry?
Yeah, just continue.
I was going to say, everything's on that website there, my history about me, the programs that I offer, the costings, testimonials. There's a whole bunch of stuff on there that people can go and have a look at and just see if I'm the right fit for them.
And are you mainly on Facebook, Instagram? Where can they find you on your socials?
I'm on all of the above. Facebook. I've got a group in Facebook called From Midlife Madness to Magnificence.
I love
and
that.
I'm on Instagram. Instagram, Gina Mitchell Coach is my Instagram. I don't know whether it's a handle, but that's my title. And also on LinkedIn as well. So I'm pretty much everywhere. So put in Gina Mitchell, Midlife Coach or Coach, they should be able to find me.
And I will, of course, leave all the links in the description for my listeners. Thank you so much, Gina. It has been such a revealing interview and so eye-opening and emotional for myself.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us.
Thank you, Ella, and thank you so much for the opportunity to do this, because I know it's a subject that needs to be put on the table and talked about a lot more in the open rather than in hushed tones, as I call it.
Yeah.
Yes,
we need to have conversations about the real stuff that's going on.
The real stuff. Yeah, the nitty-gritty stuff, that's for sure. We do.